The morning of my engagement party, I was standing in the kitchen of my childhood home, wearing my mother's old apron, trying to ice a batch of lemon cupcakes, when my phone buzzed with a text from my future mother in law. Make sure you dress appropriately tonight. Our guests have certain expectations. I stared at that message for a long time. I'd been dating her son for 2 years. We'd gotten engaged 3 weeks ago. And that was the most she'd said to me in months. My mom looked over my shoulder, read it, and didn't say a word. She just quietly handed me another cupcake to frost. That's how my mom handles things she doesn't like. She feeds people instead of fighting. I used to think that was a weakness. I don't anymore. His name was Owen. Owen Hardcastle. Third generation old money, the kind that doesn't talk about money because it's always just been there. His family had a house in Greenwich, Connecticut, not a home. A house with actual columns out front and a driveway long enough that you couldn't see the gate from the front door. The first time he took me there, I thought he was joking. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. My dad drove a school bus for 22 years. My mom did bookkeeping part time for a dental office. We weren't poor. We were solidly, quietly middle class, the kind of family that takes one vacation a year to somewhere drivable, that buys cars used, that celebrates birthdays at home with homemade cake. I never thought there was anything wrong with that until I met Owen's mother. Her name was Sylvia Harcastle. She had the kind of face that looked permanently skeptical, like everything she looked at was slightly below her standards. She was elegant in the way that costs money to maintain, always in something pressed, always with the right earrings, always with her silver hair arranged just so. She'd been cordial to me at first, politely distant. The kind of cordial that keeps you at arm's length while smiling to your face. It shifted about 6 months in when she realized I wasn't a phase. The comment started small. Oh, you work in marketing? How practical. Said the way someone would say, how unfortunate. She'd ask me about my family and then go very quiet when I answered, like she was processing something difficult. At Christmas, she gave Owen a watch that had belonged to his grandfather and gave me a gift card to a department store. Owen noticed. He wasn't oblivious. He'd squeeze my hand under the table when she said something cutting. He'd apologize in the car ride home. But he never said anything to her directly, and I kept telling myself that was okay, that it would change, that she just needed time to warm up. 2 years in, she still hadn't warmed up. The engagement party was her idea. She'd insisted on hosting it at their Greenwich house, insisted on the guest list, insisted on the caterer. I'd agreed to all of it because I genuinely thought it might be a turning point. Maybe planning something together would soften things between us. Maybe she was making an effort. I was 29 years old and I should have known better. The week before the party, I drove up to Greenwich with Owen to help finalize a few details. Sylvia had hired an event planner, a woman named Paula, who was brisk and efficient and clearly used to dealing with Sylvia's particular brand of high expectations. They were going over the centerpiece arrangements in the dining room when Owen got a call and stepped outside, leaving me standing there with his mother and Paula, and an awkward silence that nobody rushed to fill. Do you have any preferences for the flowers? Paula asked, turning to me. Oh, I said, I love peonies if that's an option. We're doing garden roses, Sylvia said. She didn't even look up from the seating chart. Peonies are very suburban. Paula made a tiny face that she recovered from quickly. I stood there and said nothing. That was the moment I made my decision. I texted my best friend Hazel that night. Hazel and I have been friends since sophomore year of college. She's a paralegal, she has zero patience for nonsense, and she's the only person I know who can deliver a devastating observation while eating chips on her couch. I told her everything. About the peonies, about the gift card, about 2 years of careful smiling dismissal. She's never actually seen you in a social setting without Owen next to you, Hazel texted back. She only sees you as his girlfriend. She doesn't know who you actually are. That's because she's never tried to find out, I wrote. So make her try. Show up somewhere she doesn't expect you. I stared at that for a while. Then I called Paula. It turned out Paula was more than willing to have an extra set of hands the day of the party. She was juggling vendors, managing a timeline, and dealing with a client, Sylvia, who changed her mind about the candle placement 3 times. When I explained that I was a family friend who'd done event coordination for corporate functions and wanted to help, she hired me on the spot as a day of assistant. She didn't know I was the guest of honor. I asked her not to ask too many questions. Hazel later said this was either brilliant or insane, and she wasn't sure which. The morning of the party, I told Owen I'd be arriving late. He looked confused. It was our engagement party, and I told him I had a surprise planned. He knows me well enough to know that when I get a certain look on my face, the best thing he can do is trust me. He kissed my forehead and said, "Just don't make my mother cry." I told him I'd do my best. I showed up at the Harcastle house at 2 in the afternoon in black slacks, a white button down, and my hair pulled back. No jewelry, no makeup beyond mascara and a little concealer. I looked exactly like someone who worked events for a living. Paula handed me a clipboard and a radio earpiece, and I spent the next 2 hours helping direct the catering staff, confirming the bar setup, and making sure the florist put the garden roses, not peonies, obviously never peonies, in the right vases. Sylvia walked past me twice without a glance. The third time, she stopped. I was carrying a stack of cocktail napkins through the foyer when she materialized in front of me, wearing a cream blazer and a look of focused displeasure. "You," she said, "you put the small arrangement on the entry table instead of the tall one." "Paula asked me to," I said. "She thought the tall one blocked the—" I don't care what Paula thought. I specifically said the tall arrangement goes in the entry. The entry is the first thing guests see. It sets the tone. "Of course," I said. "I'll switch them now." She looked at me the way you look at a vending machine that gave you the wrong item. Inconvenienced, mildly contemptuous. Then she moved on. I switched to the arrangements and went back to my clipboard. About an hour before guests were scheduled to arrive, Owen's aunt came in, his father's sister, a woman named Rochelle who I'd met twice and genuinely liked. She was warm in the way Sylvia wasn't, the kind of person who asks follow-up questions and remembers what you said. She came through the kitchen, spotted me, and her face went through 3 different expressions in about 2 seconds. She opened her mouth. I put one finger to my lips. She stared at me. Then, slowly, the corner of her mouth curved up. She pressed her own lips together, turned, and walked back into the living room. I heard her laughing about something with the catering manager 30 seconds later, and I loved her for it. The guests started arriving at 6. I circulated. I topped off water glasses. I directed people to the courtroom. I answered questions about the parking situation. All while Sylvia moved through her own party in that cream blazer, receiving compliments with a practiced smile, pointing people toward the champagne. At some point, she stopped near the bar while I was refilling a tray of glasses and said, to no one in particular, that she wished the staff would be a little less visible. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. I thought about the gift card. I thought about the flowers. I thought about 2 years of being managed from a distance by someone who had already decided who I was before she ever knew me. I finished refilling the glasses and moved on. Owen arrived at 6:45. He came in through the side door, I'd told him to, and found me in the hallway near the kitchen. He took one look at me in the white button down with the clipboard and pressed his fist to his mouth to keep from laughing out loud. "How has she not recognized you?" he whispered. "She's never looked at me long enough to see me," I said. He stopped laughing. Something moved across his face that I didn't have a word for right then. He squeezed my hand. "Okay," he said, "I'm ready when you are." We'd agreed on the timing. He would find his mother around 7:15, once most of the guests had arrived and the room was full. He would bring her to the center of the room under the pretense of making a toast, and then he would introduce his fiancée. At 7:15, I set down the clipboard. I slipped into the small bathroom off the hallway and took my hair down. I put on the earrings I'd kept in my jacket pocket, small gold drops that had belonged to my grandmother. I found the garment bag I'd left in the coat closet that morning and changed into the dress I'd brought. A deep blue wrap dress, something I'd bought with my own money from a regular store, and that I knew looked good on me. I took a breath. Then I walked into the room. Owen was already standing near the fireplace with his mother and his father, a quiet man named Jean who had been perfectly pleasant to me from the start. Owen caught my eye across the room. Sylvia had her back to me. He tapped his champagne flute. The room settled. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, he said. His voice was steady and warm, and I remember thinking, not for the first time, that I really did love him. This is a night that means a lot to me, and I want to properly introduce the woman I'm going to spend my life with. He held his hand out toward me. I crossed the room. I watched it happen in pieces. Rochelle, near the window, pressing her glass to her lips with eyes that were suspiciously bright. Paula, standing in the doorway to the kitchen, going very still, the guests turning. And Sylvia turning last, the way people turn when they're confident they already know what they're about to see. Her expression didn't collapse all at once, it kind of dissolved. The composure went first, then the certainty, and then there was just nothing. Just her face, bare of its usual armor, staring at me. I smiled at her, not unkindly. You probably know me better as the girl who put the wrong centerpiece on the entry table, I said. A few people laughed. Not everyone understood yet, but the ones who had been watching Sylvia's face were starting to. Owen put his arm around my waist. This is the woman I've been telling you about for 2 years. This is who I want to build a life with. I hope tonight you all get to see what I see every day. The room applauded. Someone near the back let out a whoop that I was pretty sure was Hazel, who had arrived 20 minutes earlier as a regular guest and had been watching the whole thing from across the room with a glass of rosé and the patience of someone who knew exactly how a story was going to end. Sylvia stood very still in the middle of all of it. I excused myself to get a glass of champagne. Jean found me at the bar and squeezed my shoulder without a word. He didn't need to say anything. Rochelle appeared 2 seconds later and said, "That was the most fun I've had at one of her parties in 15 years, and I had to put my glass down because I was laughing too hard to hold it." The thing about that night is that it wasn't really about getting even. I want to be honest about that. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I wasn't trying to win something. I was trying to show her, and maybe myself, that I didn't need her to see me for me to know who I was. I'd spent 2 years shrinking a little every time she looked past me. I was done shrinking. But I'd be lying if I said the look on her face didn't feel, at least for a moment, like something releasing in my chest. The conversation happened about 2 weeks later. Owen had told his parents he wanted to talk, and they'd come to the apartment we were sharing in New Haven. His mother sat on our couch and looked around the room with the expression she always had in spaces that weren't hers. Slightly assessing, slightly unsatisfied, and then she looked at me. "I owe you an apology," she said. She didn't say it easily. The words came out clipped and precise, like she'd rehearsed them, which she probably had. But she said them. "I've treated you as though you needed to prove something to me," she continued. "That was unfair and wrong. Owen loves you. And what I saw at that party," she paused, "you're not who I assumed you were." I thought about asking her to say more about who she'd assumed I was. I decided against it. "Thank you for saying that," I told her. "I'd really like us to try." Owen, beside me, let out a breath so slowly I almost didn't notice it. "We're getting married in September. In Connecticut, yes," Sylvia offered the house and Owen wanted to accept, and I said yes because I mean what I said about shrine. The flowers will be peonies. Sylvia agreed to it after about 4 seconds of hesitation, which I'm choosing to interpret as growth. My mom is going to make cupcakes for the rehearsal dinner. Lemon, her recipe. I told Sylvia about it and she said, "That sounds lovely," and I genuinely think she meant it. I still have the clipboard from that night. Paula sent it to me as a joke with a little bow on it. It's in the closet of our apartment, and sometimes when I'm having a hard week or feeling like I'm not enough in some room I've walked into, I look at it. I know what I'm worth. I always did. I just needed one evening to prove it, not to her, but to myself. I still think about that moment in the foyer. Sylvia walking past me for the second time, eyes sliding right over me like I was part of the furniture. And the thing is, she wasn't a monster. She was just someone who had never been taught to look. That's what I kept coming back to afterward. Not the anger, not the satisfaction of the reveal, but the sadness underneath all of it. She'd had 2 full years to know me. 2 years of dinners and holidays and quiet car rides where Owen held my hand and she sat across the table making careful, polite conversation that never actually went anywhere. She chose not to see me. And the cost of that choice, the loneliness it created, the wedge it built between her and her son, that was all hers to carry. What I did that evening wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that, at least to myself. It was self respect. There's a difference. Revenge wants to wound. What I wanted was to be honest, to stop performing smallness in rooms where I had every right to stand full height. The version of me that showed up at that party in the white button down wasn't hiding. She was watching, she was learning, and she knew exactly what she was worth before anyone in that room confirmed it. That's the thing nobody tells you about dignity. It doesn't come from being recognized, it comes from not needing to be. I spent 2 years waiting for Sylvia to see me, and what I finally understood is that her seeing me or not was never the point. The point was whether I could walk into a room that wasn't built for me and stay anyway. Stay whole, stay clear, stay honest about who I was. That takes something. It takes the patience to not react when someone diminishes you, the intelligence to understand why they're doing it, and the sheer stubbornness to refuse to become smaller just because the space they've made for you is small. Those are the sent to me on a Tuesday night in February, and then when you're heartened, the clarity to read a situation without letting emotion blind you, the will to see something through even when it costs you. That's what actually changes outcomes. Not luck, not status, not whose house has columns out front. Sylvia said something to me 2 weeks after the party that I think about more than the party itself. She said, "You're not who I assumed you were." And I almost asked, "Who did you assume I was?" But I let it go, because I realized the answer didn't matter to me anymore. I'd stopped needing her definition of me the moment I picked up that clipboard. Owen and I are getting married in September. The flowers will be peonies. I know what I'm worth. And the clipboard is still in the closet, just in case I ever need a reminder.